Are you? Because
We're live.
and welcome to another Let's Get Real. We are going to be talking about, you know, uh, oh gee, here I go again. We're gonna be talking about some real stuff today, dealing with our young people, our older people. Today, as guests, we have Brother Ray Gray with us. I'm going to give him an opportunity to introduce himself, please, sir.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ray Gray. Many of you guys know me already because I present South Carolina Conference and all over. But I'm Ray Gray. I'm here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I am an occupational therapy grad from Howard University, Oakwood in his house. What up, OC? And FAMU. I studied child psychology, occupational therapy, and I am now working as an intensive in-home therapist with Monarch. I am a qualified mental health professional. I'm also studying for my substance abuse license. I currently teach drug and substance abuse to teens up until the ages of 18. And I host Tiny Chair Talks, which is a show that is similar to this, where I have a platform on live. So if you Google Tiny Chair Talks, you'll see I'm in my fourth season. We just have forums where we talk about different topics, depression and different issues within the Adventist church specifically. And I'm just here to help you guys and just be a part of this amazing Get Real conversation. I'm one of the Sabbath school teachers here at Northeast Seventh-day Adventist Church, and I'm ready to see if you guys are really real like how we get down here in North Carolina. Blessed to be here.
All right. We have our regular panelists, Pamela Michael Lindo, and I want to be so happy to bring back Pastor Andre Campbell. Pastor Campbell, give us a few words.
It's good to be here with you all and for this exciting topic. Um, I think young people really need to hear I think this is rated E for everyone. Of course, there might be some young ears that just don't understand yet, but it's good that we're addressing topics because there's a lot of things that are not discussed and are left, and simply by leaving that information out, people are making major life decisions and choices based on partial information. We know how dangerous that could be. You know, the judge will tell you in court, ignorance is not a defense. So I'm glad that we're holding these holding court today and talking about it, having a full conversation.
All righty. And next we have with us Toya Royal Batista and Corinne Woodard and myself, your host, Sonia Woodard, and we're going to jump right in after Pastor Campbell preaches. We're going to jump right in to he prays. I'm sorry. Who do you think you are? Let's get real about it. Okay,
Let's
Pastor
bow
Campbell.
let's bow for prayer. Father, we thank you for an opportunity to come together to reflect and to get a reorientation, Lord. The world has given us its orientation while your word has tried to orient us to the truth. And so, to reorient us to the truth. So, Father, I ask that you will speak to us and through us, and that someone who needs to hear a word today will receive it. Send your Holy Spirit in abundance in this dialogue, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. So there's been so much going on. And let me just say, parents, if you have young children, you may not want them to hear everything that we're talking about. But before it goes any really deep, we will make sure that we give you an opportunity to exit the younger set. But for our, you know, high school students, middle school students, this is something that's happening with our young people as well as our older people. We're making, life decisions that can impact for the rest of our lives. Um, when we are, I'm going to start off light. When we are at church or even in our homes, what do you do when you don't know how to pray? When life is so complicated, um, you know, we don't. I was asked a question: when you don't know how to pray, and life keeps coming at you fast, what do you do? So you know what? Since this is such a religious, well, I feel it's more religious, I would like to start out with Pastor Campbell.
So, give me the premise again. I wasn't expecting to be first. So
Well, you never know what you're gonna get with
I
me.
know, right?
So, what do you do when you don't know how to pray
You
and
know,
life is complicated?
yeah. I think let's. I would start it by simply saying there are generations now, like for the last 30 years, there's generations of young people who have not been privy to the concept of prayer. They have their grandma was in her 30s and she was still going to the clubs. She wasn't going to church. And I grew up pastoring in areas where I saw this. I saw generations not associated with God, not understanding what it even means. So I think that what you've pointed out is a major thing. A lot of people have no concept. There are many with no concept of how to connect to God. So prayer, what's that? Like first and foremost, it's like what even is prayer? And so I think we need to address that. Prayer being a way of communicating with God. Mm-hmm. I see a hand. Was that Toya?
You want me to go first, Mr. Mike? Okay. I don't even think it comes down to even not knowing how to pray. I've been praying my whole life, and I had gotten to a point in life where I couldn't pray. Mentally, emotionally, I couldn't pray. I was so broken that it seemed like the prayers that I had prayed, it just felt like they fell on deaf ears. And like I stated, it's not just our young people that don't know how to pray. It's my generation where we were raised with prayer. We were raised with going to church Sunday, all day there for Pathfinders. We were helping with the elder ministry, and then on Wednesday night was at prayer. So then Friday night, literally was at church consistently, but had gotten to a point in my life where I honestly didn't understand the magnitude of prayer, where I didn't understand that I needed to grasp on and hold on to something that was dangling out there that I was used to actually help me over the hump of prayer. And it's still a struggle. Now, I'm not saying it's a struggle just to sit down and pray. It's a struggle to actually feel that your prayers are actually working.
Yo, Brother Mike, I'm sorry. Can I jump in real fast?
Yes, sir.
So, Toy, that was dope that you shared that because you literally echoed the words of my young people. So here's the thing that I've tried to tell them over the course of the years. We make prayer a little bit too difficult and too deep. Like, have a conversation with God. Like what we're doing right now, we're hosting a show where we got 6 individuals just rapping, just kicking it. This is ministry, y'all. And I would even go further and say this is church. So now to some people, it's just like, oh, well, you guys should be going to church, or this is not church, or this is not whatever. Literally, this is what I would more appreciate than actually going into a building and sitting there and listening to people, sing or preach or talk at me. So I say that to say, you're like, yo, God, today is rough. Like, what's really good? What's really going on? Like, why do I feel like have a straight up conversation like you talking to one of the homies, like you talking to whatever. And God will talk back to you in that same way. Because again, truth be told, when I go to the streets, like I'm from New York. So when I go to the streets and I'm trying to have a conversation with my unchurched homies, I don't go to them and introduce them to Sandy Patty and the hymns, come down, found every blessing. You know what I'm saying? When I have my headphones on and I'm bumping something and I'm going up there and be like, yo, and they vibing and I'm up there and I go vibing like, yo, what you listening to? I'm listening to whoop, whoop, whoop. I'm like, all right, here it is. You ever heard this fire? Like, ooh, that's dope. Who is that? So I say that and I use that. An example is, I got to use something of what they're used to in order to get them to a place of where we want them to be. And think about Jesus and his ministries. Remember what he did? He did not go to them and invite them. Yo, I got this service over in the hut. I want y'all to come to the crib. He met them where they were. He dingled and dangled and he hung with them. He got to know their language. He got to kind of just chill with them a little bit. Then he left and they wanted to know more about him. So they followed him. So they ended up doing what he did not. He compromised to doing what they do. So I say that to say that, Toy, just do you. Have that conversation. If you got to write a poem, write a poem and it will be all of God. If you got to write that rhyme, write that rhyme. Whatever you got to do, just have a conversation. And I want to encourage all my people, don't think that you got to go there and, oh, Father of the great earth and heaven above. Don't get all deep. Just have a straight conversation with your God and he will talk back to you, whether it's in that small, still voice called the conscience that speaks to you, or by sending someone along your path to give you something that you just needed for that day. That's all I got to say, Big Mike.
I got a question now. I'm piggyback off what you just said. So now, being we're trying to get with a younger generation, a younger set. So do we, or I say more flexible people, do they or should they teach one another how to tell young people just be straight up? Because the older generation are coming from a more structured way of praying and communicating. Well, Lord, thou said, and we ought to do this. So instead of doing that way of preaching, that approach, like you said, come to a normal sense. Keep it simple. Come from to speak to the Lord with language that you know, and that way the older set can be more flexible in teaching the younger set how to pray and communicate with God. So is that what you're saying?
If you look up the definition of prayer, it says, and I'm reading literally, an earnest hope or wish. At what point do does that lead anything into the this, that, and all of these big words? And here's another definition: a solemn request for help or expression of thanks addressed to God or an object of worship. So if we go back to really the core of what prayer is, it's a conversation with God. It's no point then you say you must do it this way, you must do it that way. When I learned to drive, remember it was 10 and 2. Now they don't teach that no more. Mm-hmm. So what you trying to say? I was wrong, or these cats is wrong now? How they learning to drive? Are we both driving? Are we both safe drivers? Are we getting on the road and no one is getting to an accident? Are we getting it? And see, that's what we get caught up. So I'm glad that this is the cherry on top, because I'm ready to get in. You see what I'm saying? Because we get too political sometimes, we get too religious sometimes, we just do too much and we end up losing. So to answer your question in short, I feel like at times we just think things should present a certain way, and if it doesn't, then it's wrong. And I'll just leave it at that until we go heavier.
Okay, well, let's go heavier. When I've talked to quite a few young people, and quite a few young people have talked back, when they have these open sins, say like when a young lady goes and she becomes pregnant out of wedlock, versus the private sin that nobody can see but God. Now, a lot of times that young lady, she's pregnant. Oh my gosh, we gotta get her. We need, I don't want to, for me, there needs to be a different way of how we approach, because we need to approach that young lady in love. And we need to, there can be many reasons why. A lot of times, looking for validation, looking for love in all the wrong places, or had a sudden slip in judgment, and here we are. But once we make one mistake, that mistake is open. Whereas that young man who might have someone over here pregnant, you don't see his sin. And if that young lady is not a part of the church, he's not ostracized because nobody really knows his business. And a lot of times the young men, especially when I was growing up, they weren't put up for, you got to be rebaptized. And they slide under the radar. But a young lady, when you're walking around, it's open. How do we combat that as far as we want to show ourselves loving. And then this is the other thing. A lot of people think when they come to church that, oh, I joined the church, oh, I'm sanctified and I'm holy and everybody's supposed to be kind. And then when they don't get that kindness, where do we go? Where do we go?
So the church is dealing with sexism.
Would you say that one more time?
The church is dealing with sexism.
Oh.
Yeah. Because we treat young ladies differently than we treat young men.
So
Why is that, Pastor Campbell?
So Sister Toy was saying that she had a block and she didn't know how to pray. Like, what was it like for you? Like, did you just not know how to pray? Did you just feel like your prayers were void? Did you try that example of just having a conversation with God and just felt like he wasn't hearing you?
It was a period of so much was going on. And sometimes you're already broken and then something comes along and it just feels like you just can't get your feet on solid ground. And it feels like when you get your feet on solid ground, something else happens and it's a continual slide completely down. And sometimes you don't even know how to reach out to God and be like, God, I like, for real, dude, you see me sliding, you see me, I don't, personally, I was like, I can't get no lower. But then God was like, haha, you think you can't get lower. Okay. I'm going to take you here to bring you here. And when you're in the midst of your slide, you don't realize that while you're sliding, you're actually gaining the tools you need to get back to where you needed to go, because the Lord got you and he has to let you learn those tools while you're sliding so that he can give you the tools needed to build that ladder to get back where you need to go. And that's the biggest thing. It's like when you're in the midst of that slide, it's so hard to pray. Like I've told Sonia, I was like, Sonia be like, well, pray. I'll be like, ooh, Sonia, I don't think I can do that, because I'm like, I had gotten to the point to where I had literally stopped praying. I had stopped.
That conversation, like I was talking about, even that was tough. But like, yo, dude,
all of it was tough, because literally I was in a broken state. It was really for anybody that understands, it's really even just sometimes just to say, Lord, it was hard, because I had felt that I was just left out there by myself. I literally felt that. Like I literally felt like I was just standing on sinking ground. And there's a song, there's a hymnal. I was sinking deep in sin, far from
the peaceful shore.
Peaceful shore.
Yeah.
Do you know when I was at my worstest, I'm sorry, I'm educated, y'all. Listen, when I was in my worst state of mind, where nobody really understands what depression looks like. Nobody understands what aggression really looks like. Nobody understands when you're in that moment. There were times I'd smile and laugh and hang out, and I was depressed to the point to where the only thing that kept me out of my depression was my kids going through what we went through last year. And this was the turning point for me. One day I was in, it was a really dark, bad moment. And the first thing that popped in my mind was I was sinking deep in sin, far from the peaceful shore. And then I'm like, and we really don't think about these. Like, I know we're pushing the new fad songs, but there's nothing in today's songs that brought me to the point of understanding that, you know what, let me really think about the meaning of this song. And that's what really was my anchor and what made me grasp a hold of the fact that, you know what, just talk. Just talk, just say, and I started, and I was like, Lord, this has not been easy. And I know that I've gotten to the point to where I don't even pray, the point to where I literally want to turn my back on everything. Like literally, that's where I was.
That's heavy.
And then he sent Sonia. And then along came Sonia, and she's like, oh, I need you to do this. And I was like, no, Sonia, I can't do it.
And Sonia, I said, oh, yeah,
Sonia
you are.
will wait 2 weeks. Yeah. And come back and be like, oh, well, I've already submitted your name. I'm like, huh?
Mhm.
And literally, I didn't realize that he had sent Sonia, and he had was giving me the tools to the ladder to actually bring me out of what was actually going on.
That's because I've been where you are. I've walked in those shoes. Because people don't understand. You know, people look at you from the outside, but they don't see your inside and they don't see what you're going through. When I lost my husband, the reality was I not only lost the person that I had walked through life for with 24 years, I lost my children's father. I lost another income. I lost my mental, the person that I would go to when I was falling deep in sin. And I'd be like, David, what you think about this? And he would say, I don't care where we were in our relationship. He was like my bestie. And I could always call him up or go to him and say, hey, this is going on. And he always backed me up, like was there. And I've had some insensitive people say some very insensitive things, like maybe if you had done this, your husband would still be here. But you didn't walk the walk I walked. And then I had just lost my sister like a year and a half prior to that, who was, we were like peas in a pod. I talked to her at least 5-6 times a day. And to lose that person who, when I had to do all the work that I did because my husband was already sick, she took care of my daughter. She was that stand-in mother for my daughter when I couldn't. And to lose that person and then to lose my husband,
So
I could not tell you
it
where
looks
I've
like,
been.
Sister Sonia, it looks like your daughter's actually having a reaction. I want to hear
Yes,
from
I'm
her.
sorry. I think we both
No.
are
This is
having
good. This is
reaction.
good. I want to
But
hear
I'm
from her.
gonna tell you, Brother Greg, if it wasn't for people like Andre Campbell in my life who would pray for me and was there to say, Sonia, you can do it. And for people, those friends that I have who have stuck closer than a brother and my family members, I don't know how I would have gotten through it. My church family rallying around, doing the things that they did. That's when I knew what Toya was going through. When nobody else would know. And I could say, when my cousin would come and stay at my house just to give me that security of a man being there when it meant so much, when he didn't have to. You see what I'm saying? So I knew what Toya was going through. And I had to keep that lifeline, because if I didn't have the lifeline of my parents, of those other people, the Michelle, the Nika, the Toyas, the people who were there, the Mike, and have them just keep rallying around me. I'm gonna tell you, the day that my husband died, Gigi and Sherry and Marjorie, all of them, they came to my house. I'm gonna tell you how God held me up. I don't even know how I made it through that day. They came to my house and they packed for me, they cleaned for me, they got food, they held us up when I couldn't hold myself. I don't even know how I got to the funeral home. I'm gonna be honest, I don't even remember. But God works in your life and he sends that lifeline. Because I'm telling you, Toya, I don't know if I even prayed. Because I told Andre, I don't know if I can even pray. And he said, Sonya, you can, because we gonna pray. And he prayed for me. And
So,
they prayed
Sister
for
Sonia,
me.
you actually tapping into that whole realm of what's a new phenomenon right now going around called church hurt. And Toy, you and your daughter, even though she didn't say anything, she said a lot. Because remember how we was having a pre-rap session conversation where children don't speak with words that articulated, they speak with their behaviors. And as you were talking, she had a natural reaction, and I asked her to talk about it a little bit, and it may be a little too painful, but she could probably be that voice for a lot of people who are on the line that are struggling, that are of her age or maybe around her age group. So how did you, remind me of your name again? My bad, you told me.
Corinne.
Corinne, how was it for you, and what helped you Sister Toy said she had Sonya. Sonya said she had Pastor Dre and Brother Mike and Sister Pam. Who did you have and how did you cope? Because again, if we going by layers, we getting deeper. We hitting on coping skills. Some of my people's cope with dope. You see what I'm saying? Some of them cope with sex. So how did you cope? Like, what did it for you?
Honestly, like Toya was saying, I going through that after losing my aunt, I was just like, okay, God is really testing me right now because that was my second mom. Honestly, every day with her, and to lose her suddenly, it took a toll on me. And then my dad had been in and out of the hospital going through that, and then he died suddenly, and it was just a double effect. And I have to go back before then because when we lost my Uncle Yukis, that took a toll on us. Losing him days before Christmas, like for me, Christmas has never been the same. And then losing my aunt days after Thanksgiving. Holidays for me are another day, pretty much. But for me, it's people who have been in my life who, it's too many people because I don't even want to name anybody because it's my village has been on point. Like it would be nothing I wouldn't do for my village. And my friends that showed up and supported me and made sure they were there with me every day until my dad's funeral, and checking on me and stuff, and trying to keep my mind off of things, and just being there and not forcing me to talk about it, just putting a smile on my face and stuff. I just appreciate it so much. So for me, how I dealt with it was with my village and my friends, because without them, I probably would have crumbled.
That's amazing.
And I still struggle with it. And most days, most people would not be able to tell, like, if it was bothering me and stuff, because I try not to let that affect me every day. I try to smile because I'm like, they're no longer suffering, they don't have to deal with this crazy world. So I have to just, I lean on the fact that they're just sleeping until God wakes them up.
So Corinne, you hit something really, really deep, and I'm gonna turn it back over to Sonia so she can go to the next topic. So pain suppressed is anger expressed.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say that again. Pain suppressed turns to anger expressed. You were awesome in sharing that you had people to talk to. You're a rare gem because, again, we know that people your age, especially Black and brown people in general, they don't talk. So for you to acknowledge that you had a village to go to, that's dope for the village. Second thing, for you to acknowledge that you actually used your words, that's amazing. And third, for you to acknowledge the fact that God got your back, that's just beyond measure on how amazingly powerful that you are as a testimony to so many other people who are struggling. So now, what things did it affect you? I know it affected you emotionally. How did you respond? Because again, pain suppressed. It says that you said that on some days people didn't even know. What did you do? What were some of your coping skills? How did you let it out? Were you snapping more? Were you angry a lot? Did you have to separate yourself from people? Were relationships damaged? Like, what happened? How did you express that pain?
Like, if you were in the house with me, you truly got to see it. I just completely shut down. I turned my phone off. I was in my room 24/7. I didn't want to connect with anybody because it was so bad to the point I felt like anybody who got too close to me, they seemed to either die or something happened in their life. And I just was like, I can't get close to anybody anymore because every time I do, something happens. So for me, I really shut down. Very angry. I still have anger and I'm working through it, but it's a daily thing. I would say that.
And let me say this. During that time, I was already I was pretty close to Corinne. But I think my sister literally took my spot. And I never had that issue because I worked a lot. Because here I am trying to hold up my family. My husband's sick, and my sister stepped in. I mean, she stepped in. So when my cousin Merv died somewhere in there, and then another really close cousin died somewhere in there. And when Corinne was talking about getting close, when they died, that threw her for a loop as well. Because they were filling in the gap after my brother died, my cousin Merv, then he died. So that gap, it opened even more. So she started sleeping with me, and we would lay in the bed and we talk. So for me, it was like we got really, really close, closer than, just mother, daughter. I mean, close. So one of the things that happened with us, we couldn't sleep. So when Toya started talking about I can't sleep, I told her, hey, been there, done that, can't sleep. It is because you got so much going on in your brain. To the point that my cousin Vanessa, she talked me off the ledge. She said, you need to take this. This is gonna help you sleep. It's not a habit forming. So everybody does things differently. Whereas I have a friend whose husband died, and I couldn't pull her in because she didn't go to church. She didn't do this. She didn't. And she turned to having relationships with different men trying to fill that void. And what I was trying to get her to understand is no one can fill that void but God. And for me, what I did was I made a special effort with my friends, with my family, but especially with my church. I started working more in the church so that I wouldn't get into drinking, drugs, sex, all those things. Because even as adults, people think once you become an adult, hey, that's it, you're an adult. Being an adult, I tell you, being an adult is hard.
So that's an amazing segue as we transition. So first, I'd like to say that we have the link for the ACEs. We would like for everyone to go ahead and take the ACEs test, because Sister Sonia, you don't even know how powerful that testimony was. You can't have a testimony without a test. You see what I'm saying? You got to go through it. Look at the story of Joseph. He wouldn't have been the Joseph that we know him if he hadn't had that story. As painful, as traumatic as it was, Joseph was one of the things that the Sabbath school lesson talked about, some weeks back. But I want to take the time to ask everyone who's listening on the live, first and foremost, thank you for joining us. We're just having a real conversation, guys. I don't know at what point you chimed in, but we've been talking about prayer. Sister Toy brought up how painful it was for her at times to pray. Sometimes may still be. We talked about death, dying, grieving, and how we have to let it out, coping skills. So we talked about quite a bit. And now what I would like for everyone to do, it literally will take you 2 minutes to go ahead while we're talking. You don't have to stop what you're doing. You don't have to spend too much time and focus on it. Just real simple questions, a yes or no response. I would like everyone to take the ACEs. ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experience. The ACEs test. You can Google it. You can go anywhere. You can just literally put that in, or you can click the link that we have, and it will bring you right to the test. Again, ACEs is Adverse Childhood Experience. You'll get it's a maximum score of 10. And your number will reveal to us where you are, and I'll help to break it down, and it will make sense as to how we are, who we are, why we respond in which the way that we do. For those who came on a little later, my name again is Ray Gray. I am not a licensed therapist. I am an occupational therapy grad, and I am a qualified mental health professional with Monarch for 16 years. And I've been in the mental, emotional, behavioral health game for 25 years. I am a mental health coach, and I do therapy through sports. I've realized that my Black and brown people, especially my young individuals under the age of 21, they don't talk. But if you give them a ball, if you talk about sports, you work out and train with them, that was the platform. So the Greyhound Group, which is my company, is a platform and a place where we dump. we do sports, we do training, but we also incorporate therapy into that to allow wonderful conversations like what we're having now. And it works well. It's amazing. I have 420 clients in a short span of time. God is good. And we're just here having a conversation, and I'm just here to try to navigate that. I would also like to acknowledge, I think it's Errol King.
Yes, I was getting ready to read some of his.
Go ahead and read those for me, Sister Sonia.
Well, one of his statements was to you saying, "I say we need to do more, not we did more. Sorry, not less for the youth in our church." So to take the I'm trying to go back on his things.
Yeah, he was saying about the Bible says that when you pray in public, keep it short. And, like you said, he mentioned how they did a lot for the church. But are individuals allowed to unmute and actually chime in and be part of the conversation?
No, not on this platform.
Okay.
But I do want to go back. I want to go back to Sister Miracle Scott. She said you asked someone to help you with prayer. And so, yeah, I want to acknowledge that she said that, because sometimes you can find people that can help you, but when you can't pray, like I told a friend of mine, sometimes you just have to hum, or you just have to say it in your head.
That's a good point. That's a good point. So, Brother Errol, if you have more points, anyone have points that you want to put out there and we want to highlight, acknowledge, I would absolutely love to do that. And again, please take the ACEs. It is not just for this platform, for this show, for this rap session that the ACEs is important. It's a life changer. It's a game changer. For all those 18 and over, listen to the words I'm saying. It's not something that I suggest. It's something that we all need to do. The ACEs really, really breaks things down. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But real short.
I'll give you some time at the end. I would like to hear something from Pastor Andre, because he's been super quiet today. And I wanted him to chime in a little bit on prayer and how it, affects us and how it's so needed.
Well, I'm always the one talking a lot of times, so it was good to hear other people's thoughts and opinions. I agree that prayer is a conversation with God. It's exchanging thoughts with God, and what we discover, His thoughts are higher than our thoughts and clearer than our thoughts, and a lot of other things in line with that. So when I started out, I may have been misunderstood. I don't know, because both individuals that chimed in kind of alluded to it. And I kind of sat back so I could understand where they were coming from and listen. That's why I sat for a while to listen. When I speak about the missing piece, right? I grew up in church. And when I say church, understand, when I say church, I'm talking about the construct, the religious construct, denominational construct, etc., right? And so prayer was a part of my life. Even when I would be like falling asleep while they're doing these hour-long prayers and all this, the religious part of it. What I was addressing was the fact that there are generations that have no concept of what it means to talk with God, what it means to have exchanged thoughts with God. And sometimes we have to start from the beginning. We have to get back to what is the purpose of prayer. And we address that. It is that communication. So, I want young people to recognize, young and old, because some older folks, they've been in the rote way of praying. I get on my knees for a certain prescribed amount of time in the morning. I do it again, on the weekends, especially at church, etc. But what about an ongoing discussion, an ongoing dialogue? When I did a unit in chaplaincy. And I really enjoyed it to the point where I almost wanted to go and finish out that whole thing. But someone told me like 20 years ago, every leader, pastor should do at least one unit in it. And what it taught me was to listen. Because a lot of times, the thing about it, what I realized is, so when I went into a hospital room and I listened to a person instead of trying to share with them what I thought, what ended up happening is they ended up sharing so much with me. And they ended up with a concept called metanoia. And metanoia is a term that basically says they have a transformative spiritual experience where they come to terms with certain things. So I don't have to convince them of it. I don't have to do any of that. They literally come to this on their own. So what I see happening when in line with prayer is God is willing to listen to everything you have to say. If we come to a recognition of that, he is willing to hear us out. You can switch topics, you can be all over the place. But the funny thing is I sat there and I listened in these hospital rooms to people literally coming to terms with the things that they were wrestling with and saying it out loud. I've had people, they start out blaming everyone else. Then they blame God. Then they blame the devil. Then they finally may get to looking at themselves in the situation. It's a really disoriented place to be. And prayer is an opportunity for us to get a reorientation in our discussion with God. You know, I look at the prayer, and I'll end with that. I look at the prayer that Jesus gave. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And it's the English version, you know, who knows what the original really, what we could have really had if we could translate it ourselves. But our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Now, just as Jesus talking and say, when you pray, you should pray like this. And some people are like so dead like, it got to be this. But when I listen to what he says, lead us not into temptation. But when you look at the 40 days in the wilderness, Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness and into that situation. The Spirit led him into that. And so Jesus knows what it is to be led. So he's like, lead. And he says, so pray to the Father, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. So, simply put, if you don't know what prayer is, if you haven't experienced the power of prayer to help you to get reoriented to the principles and the ways of God, because he'll reveal that to you. You get to spitting out all this stuff that's in you. You know, I want to commit suicide. I feel like nobody cares about me. I feel like, and you're getting all of this stuff out of you. It's a moment of reflection. And a lot of people don't have those moments of reflection. And so prayer is that powerful medium for that. So, you know, I jive with what we're saying here. It's a necessary thing, but it doesn't have to be on your knees at a certain time of the day. And I often tell young people, no prayer. What I say, no Bible, no breakfast, no Bible, no bed. That's just to really get in the mindset that at some point you got to incorporate the word of God. Thy word have I hidden in my heart that I might not sin against it. We got to incorporate. I know that's a King James version with the thy and the these, but the concept is there. We need that word of God, and then we enter into dialogue with him, because now we're exchanging thoughts, and his thoughts are outlined in his word, but his Spirit also will share those things with us too. So that's a lot.
Can I ask a question? I want to kind of transition on another format where you have young people who, yes, they have a prayer life or know about prayer life, and it kind of wavers through their everyday livelihood. What about the person that may succumb to their feelings? Those hormones are popping, and they get in a relationship with another person, okay? And unfortunately, when they succumb to those pressures, at that time, they're not thinking about Christ. Let me get my prayer life going on. So in them not getting their prayer life going on, they succumb to the pressures, and unfortunately, she becomes pregnant. So what do you say to the person who becomes pregnant, how to adjust? They're not going to have abortion. And, then the church gets involved, and they want to excommunicate her or just disfellowship her, and as I said, it's back to the sexism type thing. The more pressure's put on her as opposed to him. So how do we as a church or just people in general deal with that? Oh, I got here from Toya. Come on, Toya. Bring it, Toya.
Go ahead, Toya.
Okay. That one is a hard one because of the fact that it happens so much. It happens so, it's one of those things where we're so quick to point out those public sins. It's public. I don't need you to acknowledge the fact that it happened. It happened. And I've been in that situation where my first son was born out of wedlock. Young, 25, fresh home from Oakwood. I was like, whoo, because a lot of times you go to Oakwood, you might go without a baby, but you're coming back with a baby. So I was like, whoo, I dodged that bullet. I'd have made it through Oakwood. I'm good. Get home, get involved, and stuff happens. At the time, I was the assistant pathfinder director. So now I'm like, I came home, started working in the church, then felt, but I took it upon myself. You guys don't have to put me down. I know this is my sin. Let me step down. And even with me stepping down, there was still always somebody pointing, nitpicking. And I'm the type of person, I don't care. Like, I literally have the attitude of, I don't care. But that's not the mentality of other people, because it literally runs them away. And I believe that we should have had like brand new parenting class. A lot of these girls really don't know. And they're shut brand new parenting classes, ways that you can find self-care and self-love, and we don't have that. And that's just not from 15, 16 years ago. It still happens today. And we should be able to grow with the times and the things that's going on. A lot of times we push our kids away from the church, and that if we're pushing you away, you don't think the world gonna welcome you with open arms to say, hey, they don't want you over there. We have so much stuff for you to do. And it's funny because it's the things that's going to tempt us, is the things that they told us not to do in church. When I was growing up, don't wear skirts above your ankles. When we go into the world, I'm going to put on the shortest skirt and the lowest cut shirt I could find. Don't go to the movies. You know what I'm going to do? Every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm going to the movies from 9 a.m. to 12 midnight. And this is what it is, because don't go here because of it. And we're so quick to restrict everything that soon as they get away from that restriction and you start pushing them away, the world is standing right there with open arms. So you treating them like this and the world treating them like this, where do you think they're going to choose? And there's so many people. There have been none of my kids have been christened in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. None of them.
Blessed. And we're not going to get into churches. We're going to stay as Christians, ma'am.
Well, the only reason why I say this is because they weren't blessed. I guess we don't do christening.
No, we don't. We
weren't blessed.
Right, Pastor Andre, we blessed, right?
Okay, well, none of my kids were blessed, and I'm going to say it, the Seventh-day Adventist Church. They were blessed in Kojic, C-O-G-I-C, Kojic, a Kojic church. Kevin has godparents that are Seventh-day Adventists and non-Seventh-day Adventist godparents.
I'm gonna block you in a minute.
We were blessed. I'm sorry, but we're getting real, and this is
we're getting real, but we're staying as Christians at the end of the day.
They weren't. He wasn't blessed there. None of my kids were blessed into where I call my church home. Can I say that?
Yes.
Okay, where I call my church home. None of my kids were blessed there. And the last two, I was married. The first one, it wasn't allowed. My thing is, punish me for my sins. My children have nothing to do with that. So what you're doing is you're blocking the blessing of the children. Why? Just because I sinned? Like it really bothered me that I couldn't get my son blessed where I called church home, and I had to take him outside of my church home for him to be blessed, because I needed somebody to bless him, because I knew what kind of life I was living at the time. And I was like, I need some kind of blessing on my child. So wherever I fall short, that blessing will kick in until I could get myself together. I don't know if that's the right thinking or if that's the way, but I knew that I was falling short. And I knew that I needed something else to hold him until I can get myself right. And I believe that blessing is what held him and kept him until I was able to say, okay, Lord, I'm done with the foolishness, and here I am.
Well, Toya, isn't that a symptom of hurt? I mean, this might be Brother Gray's area more, but what I hear is hurt. So when we are hurting, don't we, Brother Gray and Pastor Andre and everybody else, don't we lash out in certain ways? Just because I do it in a different way, I embrace the church and I went there to have my healing, doesn't mean that you weren't hurting. It just meant I did it in a different way.
I'm not going to say I wasn't hurt. It had got to the point where I just stopped coming to church.
Well, that's the response to hurt. That's a response. There's different types of stress. There's stress, which is positive stress. Then there's negative stress as we know it. But your response is most certainly a response, and nobody just doesn't wake up and be like, nah, I'm gonna go, cut myself today, or I'm just not gonna go to church today. It's literally something that happens first in the back of the mind, the subconscious, and it creeps up to the foreconscious, which turns to actions. But it is always started with a thought, a feeling that turns into a behavior. Absolutely. So that was your response. I mean, we talked earlier with Corinne about what did she do. So again, some people cope differently. That was a coping skill. It wasn't maybe the healthiest, but yes, that's definitely your response.
It had to be healthy because just like you say, suppress pain turns into aggression. I was one of those people. If you came at me sideways when it had to do with my child, then it was on. So to bypass all of that and not have to deal with that, I just stopped coming to church. And yeah, it sucks that I had to stop coming, but I felt for me to actually not end up in hell, literally, for me not to go to hell and for me not to dig a hole deeper than what I can get myself or Jesus can bring me out of, I feel like I had to separate myself from the church because I felt, in my mind, I felt some people's relationships were closer with God. Like some people was up here with God and I was down here. This was my mentality. Some people were up here with God and I was down here. And I feel that those people had a better connection to God. And if I offend those people, then I'm going straight to hell.
So I like what you said, Toya. You preferenced it with I feel. And I can appreciate that because feelings and facts don't agree. Just because you feel a certain way doesn't make it real. I can feel like the sky is purple, but what's the justification to support that, to make that feeling a fact? So with you saying I feel, that's not necessarily saying that would have happened. That's just how you interpret the circumstances and the situation to be best for you. So that was dope. And I don't know if it was intentional, but that was really, really, really powerful. And I encourage you, whenever you share things like that, to always preference it with I feel, because it lessens someone else clapping back at you to be like, you're wrong for how you feel. How are you going to tell me how I feel? Now, if you would have made a blanket statement, the church would have, that diminishes your feeling and your thoughts. So here's the thing that, Pastor, you can chime in. We took the same psychology class. I remember you in my class. But I'm tripping. But anyway, to make this kind of sit home a little bit, there's a difference between understanding and agreeing. While I understand what you did, I also understand why you did it, but I don't agree that you did it. So I say that I understand because seemingly it makes sense to, if I feel tension, it's better for me to withdraw. When in the situation with being around powerful people, the best thing to do when you feel that tension is to surround yourself with positive people, selective positive people in that same environment, because it's harder to leave than come back than to be in it and have mess around you and to leave from that, if that makes sense. So I understand, but I don't agree that withdrawing and pulling away, because there's a certain amount of resentment that stays with you once you leave and go back, especially when those same people that were giving you the side eye or wronged you don't personally come up to you and say, I'm sorry. So whether it's overt and whether it's a resentment that you show and you demonstrate it, it's there. Does that make sense, Toy? Could you actually say that maybe truth to that? You know, what do you think?
Sign up, kind of, sort of, because I've gotten to. Everybody's not going to get to this point, or everybody's not going to get to this point as fast as they get to the point. Everybody has their own timeline.
Mm-hmm.
I got to the point to where I didn't care. Like, literally, it came down to, you can look at me sideways, you can look at me. I don't care. And I think I had to realize that my mentality and my spirituality had more to do with myself than to let other people say things to run me away from what I needed. Like, at that time, after having a baby, you need that foundation, that spirituality. You need someone to say, you know what? Granted, you sin, we all sin. You know, you never fall too far from God's grace. There's never a sin that happens where you can't, recover from. And I didn't have that. And I had to figure that out. And I think that's the hardest part, trying to figure out that recovery from sin by yourself without having someone that you've looked up to looking down on you. So I got to the point to where I just didn't care. And when I got to the point that I didn't care, I stopped giving people a pass. Like, you can't give me dirty looks. You can't look at me mean. You can't side eye me, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at you and keep going. And that was my coping mechanism of whatever, and keep moving. But nobody gets a pass. Nobody gets a pass. Nobody gets oh, that's just the way they are. No, that's done and over. Nobody gets a pass. And I think it's because a lot of these things happen is because we allow people a pass. We give them an excuse. We give them an exception to continue to treat people the way they treat them, because everybody else has a mentality of, oh, that's just the way they are. No. Because if you never point out to someone that what you just did is really rude or disrespectful, or they're never going to change.
But did you really point out to them how you felt, or did you just not give them a pass?
Lash out.
You just lash out. Because here's the difference. If I wake up and I have a bad day, and I look at your way, and I look at and I glance you, and I have a sour look on my face, you could misinterpret that I am looking at you some type of way, I'm judging you or whatever, and you would now respond to me, whether overtly or in your mind, that dude is trying to play me, he looking at me, he judging me or whatever. It's what we call cognitive distortions or irrational thinking, and you will have a different type of response based on how you interpreted how my look was to you. So it's very dangerous to be like, I don't care, because again, you said it best. That is a coping skill. It's not, I'm not going to say it's a positive coping skill or it's the healthiest coping skill, but that's how you coped. And who am I to judge you and tell you that your coping? I can't tell you that it's wrong for how you coped. I can't tell you it's wrong for how you dealt with it. You felt like you needed to do that in order for you to have healing, but I just want you to bring to your attention so that you can look into it. Be very careful, because again, when we are at a vulnerable place, it's easy for us to interpret someone's look, someone's behavior, or even someone's words to mean they're trying to come at me or they're trying to come for me, when that's not always the case.
For me though, I understand exactly what Toya is saying, because sometimes I have to walk away because my mouth and my facial expressions will get me in trouble 9 times out of 10. And a lot of times people can do it with a, what is it? How you say it? Nice, nasty?
Yeah.
Nice, nasty attitude. And so sometimes for me, stepping away is the best solution in the situation, because I don't want to have anybody take me out of my character to
now hear me well. I'm not saying stepping away is wrong. I'm just saying when you step away and how you step away. If someone looks at you, you look at them, you interpret, oh, they're being nasty, you step away, that thought stays with you, and you have clumped them into a category that is not a positive space to be. You compartmentalize, whether you do it on purpose or by accident. Just like they have this thing called unconscious bias, you unconsciously put that person into a place. If you would have said to them, hey, you know, I saw that look that you gave, you know, you wanted to say something or blah, blah, blah. And if they give you a genuine response and be like, girl, my bad, I was daydreaming, I dozed off, I had a horrible morning, and they explain to you, now you can just, you still leave, but now you got, okay, my bad. I could have thought that person was X, Y, and Z. Do you get what I'm saying? Now, I'm not saying to, Toya don't get it. I'm not saying to altogether just not leave. I'm just saying that you got to be careful of when you leave and the information that you're leaving with. Go ahead, Toy. Go ahead. Hit me with the rebuttal so the people on the line can get live.
If I can cut in real quick, Toy, if you don't mind. I guess the believers, as believers, we miss a really great opportunity when someone makes what is deemed a mistake or sins or otherwise, when we miss a really good opportunity to not kick them while they're down, but to instead show them something that the world does not show. We also miss a great opportunity when we find them in a disoriented state, right? Because sin disorients us, that we also punish them for being disoriented. Rather than saying, let me bring you into a reoriented state that is going to realign you with God's divine nature and show you his real character. We are a lot of times the first line of defense, like the Marines stormed the beach, right, of Normandy or whatever. We're that first line of defense that actually, I like Hebrews 11:1. Faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen, right? We're saved by grace through faith. The Bible tells us that where sin abounds, grace superabounds. If where the people of God reside and I say coagulate, but I was talking about where we come together and fellowship, that should be a place where people find grace for their mistakes, where they find mercy for their mistakes. They also find, like Jesus said to the woman caught in adultery, he called everybody out, they left, and then he said to her, hey, look up. Where are thine accusers? And she said, they're not here anymore. He said, well, then neither do I accuse you. Go and sin no more. It's a realignment, a reorientation. Adam and Eve, when they ate of the fruit and got disoriented, because God gave them a big orientation in Genesis 2, right? Yep. Here's the garden. Here's everything. They went after whatever amount of time passed, we don't know, and they actually got disoriented by partaking of the fruit. We heard God coming. If we believe the narrative, they hid themselves. God said, why are you hiding yourself? And they said, oh, because we were afraid. Why are you afraid? Because we realized we're naked. Who told you you're naked? And what did they do? In that moment of disorientation, God wasn't there to punish them, right? He was there trying to get them to come back to their senses because they had got disoriented. And what did Adam do? Adam deflected. Oh, it's the church's fault. It's Eve's fault. Eve was like, you ain't gonna leave that on me. She said, it's that serpent that you made. It's his fault. So we get into this process of deflection when we really don't get to the heart of the matter. What we want is for that young lady in particular, but that young man too, because I always deal with both, right? I always address both and talk to both, because my thing is, number one, young lady, we love you. We don't want you to leave. This has been in the 23 years of ministry that I've had when they do, because they do show up pregnant, right? And usually the young man is usually not even in the church, in that with gathering with that part of the body, right? And so I say, we love you, and not only that, we want to give you your baby shower. We want to give you your baby shower. That is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen in our world. As God's people, that's what we're called to be. So I think that there's another way of doing it, a reorientation, not just because all of us are sinners, but there's a reorientation for the body of Christ in and of itself. It's crazy I have to say that, but I believe there's a reorientation the body of Christ needs to stop kicking people while they're down, stop punishing them. And I'm repeating myself on purpose because repetition deepens the impression. Stop punishing. We have to stop and say, are we punishing people for being disoriented? Because the gospel is not that. The gospel says, look, the gospel, I think it's 2 Corinthians or 1 Corinthians 5. It talks about, Sonia, you hear me talk about that all the time. Our ministry is a ministry of reconciliation, not the church manual. because the church has to have standards, but God has principles. And his principle, God has chosen to operate according to his word. Even though Old Testament, you see all these people get killed, touching the ark, die, all this other stuff, kill the whole family, kill everybody. But the message, the overarching message is that there's a God who loves us. And that and he's operating, when it comes to salvation, he's operating from a love ethic, not this rule ethic that we get caught up in. So
That's good.
And there was a comment made on the chat about the church, referring to the church manual and accountability. So what you just said, Pastor, is that, like you said, you had the young lady offer the services of having a baby shower. That's a point in the church being flexible too, not to admonish, but to accept that, hey, you're still part of the fold. That's accountability on our end to say, hey, we still love you. You're still part of the body. And that way you still make her feel accepted. She's still part of us.
It's a way of acknowledging that all have sinned, and the actual translation is, and continue to fall short of the glory of God. There's not one of us that do not sin, do not miss the mark, any of that. It's an acknowledgement, and it's a show of mercy, which is what we're called to do. That's the gospel. Kindness, long suffering, patience. The man the Good Samaritan, in contradiction to the others who went by the man who was wounded, the Good Samaritan didn't care why he was wounded. He wanted him to get healed.
Let me just break in here. I know a lot of people, I've been getting a lot of texts. A lot of people have been trying to take the ACE test, the ACE test that you put. The link that was put up explains the test. So our tech person, he's wonderful, Andre, has put up the other one so that you'll be able to take the test, but you have to go under the section that says Learning Center and then just keep scrolling. And when you get to where it says take the test, don't click on it. It doesn't click. Keep going. And under it, it'll start giving you the test. So I just needed to explain that to everyone. And then Corinne had a comment.
We also, I think the church also forgets that no sin is greater than the other. All sins are equal. And for some reason, that completely goes out the window when open sin versus sin behind doors is compared.
Okay, good point. So Sister Toy, before we Pastor spoke, you were shaking your head like you wanted to expound on something more. I didn't know if you lost your train of thought or if Mike, you want to take over.
Yeah, no, I still got the train of thought. I know.
Let's hear that train. Let's.
This is me. So you said, I'm trying to remember verbatim about the coping mechanisms, and if someone's giving you the side eye, and you shouldn't be so quick to think that it means more than what it is or interpreted. Okay, so any interaction between human beings are interpreted or preconceived interactions where you could do something and in my mind you're doing one thing or saying one thing, but in your mind it means that you're doing and saying something else. So I could come up to you and hit you and I'm like, ha ha ha. And in your mind, you're like, I know good and well they did not just hit me. But in my mind, it's, oh, I'm not really meaning to do that. Or in your mind, it's, hey, I was just saying hello. That's just the way I greet people. The thing is, if you constantly do it, and I'm giving you the same reaction every time you do it, I don't think, if you hit me and I'm like, yeah, you hit me, I don't think that I should have to tell you, hey, don't hit me because I don't like it. You saw my reaction to it. That's just like if someone's giving me the dirty eye or the side eye or feeling a certain type of way, and they look at me and I look at them a certain type, my body language is going to speak a lot louder than what my words are going to say. Because some people do stuff and what they want is a reaction out of you. Like you said that they could have been having a bad day, but my thing is it's not cut them off once they do it once. It's you're not having 6 bad days, and every time I see you, you're having a bad day and you're cutting me off. It's not just a walk away as soon as it's a continual buildup of you've constantly done something. And I understand where Corinne's coming from. You've constantly done something, and what you've done is you've stacked the chips. Now, once the chips are stacked, I'm not going to continue to allow you to stack the chips.
That makes sense. Like that, but you said nobody gets a pass. So
nobody, no.
Right, but I was under the impression that when you said nobody, that means a person like me who's a guest, and I just come in and I don't even know you, and I just look your way, and and then and you automatically just clap at me because you think that I know your business, or you think that I'm trying to simulate. No, that's what I was talking about.
Oh, so no.
Nobody. I thought I'm not going to toy church because
you get a pass. You can sit right next to me on Center's Road. You get a pass right over here.
Okay. But it's if you're talking about the habitual person that
the habitual offender, where we have that person, that old usher. No matter what church you go to, you always have that one usher that just does not know, Miss Pam, how to speak to people. Mm-hmm. And she is the head usher at that church. And she is usher ministry. And every time you attend that church, there's always just this rude, unloving welcome. It's a hey, thank you for coming, but it's so unloving that it makes you not want to go back. So what you do is you try to enter in the side door. The day you enter into that side door, she's standing over here. You like, darn. Okay. Then you was like, I know she's standing at this left door. I'm gonna go to the right door. You go over there to the right door. She's standing at the right door, and you're like, man, and it's constantly stacking those chips. And you mention it to somebody. You're like, hey, does Sister so and so treat you when you go to Abraham Lincoln's Church of Jesus Christ? Does she treat you the same way? And they're like, yeah, but that's just the way she is. We're not doing that. We're not giving her a pass to continually treat people that way, because that first time that I walked into Abraham Lincoln Church of Jesus Christ, that could have been my last time walking in there. And that probably was what I needed to come back, but she's just hindered me coming back.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Now that individual who habitual, that's way different than the narrative of nobody. You scared a brother.
Oh no, you come on over. No, you can get. But see, here's my thing. If you don't do anything to me, you won't need a pass, because guess what? We cool. You look at me sideways, I'm be like, hey, and if you're like, oh no, then hey, there's no problem. But
you really did an amazing job clearing that up. And Errol, I don't know if he was right onto something, but he says that we learn in school that perception is everything. That's old school thinking. Perception is not everything. Communication is. Because if you think about it, you just use the analogy of perception and intent. If I intend on, I tap you, hey girl, how you doing? And be like, I know you didn't just touch me. I do not like to be touched. If you warn me and tell me, and then the very next day I do it again, I'm being disrespectful on purpose. However, if my intent is just like, hey, how you doing? I just give you a nudge, a loving nudge, and you perceive or receive that as disrespectful, and you just don't even give me a chance and you just clock me. Perception is not everything. Communication is, hey, I don't like to be touched. That's what's everything. Now, I've told you, I've warned you, and we've had dialogue now. Now, if you continue to do it, now you're a habitual offender, and now we got some problems because now you're being disrespectful on purpose. First, and my philosophy is I don't believe in this 3 strike stuff. Once is a mistake, twice is a habit. You do it one time, okay, you didn't know. You do it a second time, now come on now, what's going on here? You don't get a third time. You know what I'm saying? Because I was very clear on how I felt about what you said or did. You chose not to listen, because the difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is one of the abilities that God gave you. You don't have to actively do anything. To listen is to cognitively, actively get involved and pay attention to words that's spoken. So you wasn't listening. You just decided not to, whatever. And much like anger is a choice, you know what I'm saying? When you become angry, you have a choice on how to respond. So the natural feeling of anger, you can't choose that, but how one responds is a choice. So that's why I'm really big on my kids. Absolutely. I'm really big on my kids where they say, you made me mad. Nobody can make you nothing. You have to choose. Go ahead, Sister Sarah.
Wait now. Okay, Brother Ray. Now, wait a minute. I need you to come on over here. Okay. Now,
let's talk about it.
Okay. Now, when we're in the world, okay, you were talking about clapping back. Okay, some people, let me give you this scenario, because this actually happened. This person, not necessarily me, walking down the aisle, exiting church, the Abraham Lincoln Church. Okay. We're exiting the Abraham Lincoln Church. And this person who always giving me a side eye decides they're going to come up behind me and keep pushing me in the back. Now, Pastor Andre, who just did this eloquent prayer, sermon, and now you want me to be like, oh, sister such and such, could you stop pushing me? Now, and then what kills me is people, and I'm speaking for me now, people tend to be agitators to me. They feel like they can walk up, say whatever they want. And then when I've had enough, now you said the first time it's what?
Once it's a mistake, once you have it.
Okay, well they're on number 50. So now that they're on number 50 and I've had enough, and I turn around and say, listen, you got one more time to try that. And I'm gonna trip you down right here in this walkway. But now it's perceived that, oh, well, you know how she is, you know how she acts. Why is that when your behavior and your friends' behavior are out of order? And I'm not just talking about for the young people. This is one of the things the young people complain about. And this is something that the older people tend to try to sweep under the rug and tell you, well, just ignore them. Okay, I ignored you the first 5-10 times. But now I'm not ignoring you anymore. I'm going to be like Toya said, I'm going to be like, okay, now, because now you have gotten on my last nerve. And I know Brother Andre wants me to turn that.
You just now proved my point. You said, now I am not going to ignore you. It
Correct.
is a choice.
So what are you saying? That even I should just keep ignoring the bad behavior?
You notice the word that
what
you
if
use?
what if you're not, Pam? I know you haven't talked. I'm sorry. Now, brother Gray, say what now?
You said, what should I do? I can't sit here and tell you what you should do, but what I can tell you factually,
yes,
is when you respond, you choose to respond in kind, or you choose to clap back and go off her. Your anger response is a choice. That's what I'm saying.
I didn't say I said it angrily. What I said was, you have the little bad angel sitting here, and then you have a little good angel sitting here. and what I've been really trying to do is listen more to that good angel and be like, okay, listen, I'm trying to handle it as an adult. Okay. But what I keep telling young people is, and I've said this, older people for some reason think they should get a pass, like Toya was talking about, for their bad behavior. And my whole thing is, I try to not be negative. And I'm really trying to say, listen, sister, if you are in a rush, please feel free to go ahead of me. But I need you to stop pushing me in the back, because that's what I'm feeling. And even, trying to say it nicely. Hold on. I know Pam over here. I saw a hand and whatever, and I want to give Pam a chance. Go, Pam, please.
Hello, everybody. Whew, y'all touched on that one. So, Brother Ray, I'm going to tell you, I'm not the one to shut my mouth. If that sister do something in church, I'm saying something, so somebody going to have some issues. I'm going to say what I have to say, and from there, you take it any which way you want. But once I've said it, I'm done.
Okay, but again, it's a choice in how you say it and what you say. You catch more.
Take it any way you want.
It's not a matter. So you're talking about reception and intent. You're again, listen to what I'm saying. All I'm saying is factually, these are no feelings involved. Anger response is a choice. That's all I said. You
I
can
don't believe it's anger.
I don't think I'm angry.
Yeah, but again,
I think
you
it's, I think it's
said,
being
I don't.
very firm.
I'm just
You
being
just
very
said
blunt.
You're
I'm
passionate.
being
You're
very
firm.
blunt. When I say
listen. You
when
just
we say
said.
things bluntly, everybody take it that we are angry. Why is it when Black women or Hispanic women say something, it's always that we're angry?
So
Why is it? Can we
we're
just say
deviating.
it?
We're going so many different places right now. We're going
No, I just want
so
to
many
be
different places right now.
Why is it that everybody take it that we're angry? We're not angry. We just say.
Hey,
what
Mike,
we
did you ever
have to
hear me
say.
say she was angry? Did you ever see me say anything about angry thoughts? Okay.
Mr. Mike, you over there, you better shake your head. Yeah. You got a
But Brother Gray, you said it's anger. You did say that now.
I did not define it as anger.
Anger. That's not his intent. No.
That I did not define it as anger. I never said you were angry. I didn't point the finger at you.
No, you said it is anger.
I said the response you choose when something happens to me. If Mike punched me in the jaw, I can choose to be like, brother, please don't hit me again. I could be boiling on the inside.
No, he chose violence when he did that.
Angry on the inside. But what I say and how I say it is in a kind manner. It is not what you say, but how you say it. If
but isn't that how you take it? Or something I may say.
That's back to the perception and intent. I can't help how you receive. I can only help how I intend. And if I say, girl, I love you, you be like, that didn't seem genuine, or I stepped on your toe, I'm sorry. You could say, oh my gosh, that seemed fake. I don't believe that. You can keep that little apology of yours, but I really, from the bottom of my heart, meant it. My intent. You didn't take it like how I meant it. That's on you. That's not on me. So what I'm saying is an anger response is a choice. That's all I'm saying. I didn't say, oh, Black sisters, and oh, every time a Black woman, we didn't go there.
Okay, this is why Brother Gray is coming to Florida on October 30th to have an in-session meet, talk it out, chat it out. We might even have to have a brawl because at this point, because it's our interpretation of Brother Gray. But anyway, I'm kidding. But anyway, let me tell you, this is gonna be a time. So yeah. So okay, Pastor, you've been quiet for a while.
Because he's praying.
Now, because he's scared. Because Pastor knows that these church, when we get in church, and these people, I mean, people are rude to you, have been rude to you as being a pastor. Your response has had to be, as Brother Gray said, tempered as far as your response, correct?
Choose how you respond. That's all I say. Choose. It's a choice.
Pastor.
When you hit me,
you
chose that. There's a difference.
Yeah, they chose that. Yeah.
No, my thing is, if you hit me, you made the choice for me. You chose violence.
Not so.
That's
not so.
Okay, Pastor Andre, please explain.
Flesh, not the spirit. You're speaking in the flesh. I respect that in the flesh, but in the spirit, that's like saying my husband made me go to
kill him. Yes,
and I didn't want to go. You chose to go. You chose to listen. What I'm saying. You can respectfully disagree, but listen. It doesn't make sense, but it makes sense at the same time.
Yeah.
You chose to go out of respect for him, giving up your and what you did. But that's what we do in relationships. You feel me? We sacrifice. So you sacrifice. If someone punches you in the jaw, you know that's an old 90-year-old woman. You know that if you blow on her, she will fall down. So you can choose to respond to hit her back, or you can choose to just grab her and sit her in the pew and say, sister, sit here if you want to live to 91.
Because she just hit the spirit out of me. As soon as she hit me, the spirit decided that it wanted to jump over there.
To you than to her, because now you're weak for responding in that fashion. Because your flesh needs, your spirit needs some fine tuning. Because again, let's go back to the Bible and
we established this when we first started.
Right. Let's go back to the story of Joseph and Joseph and his brothers. Remember how they did him grimy? They did him dirty. 30 years later, The brother was he clapped at them at first. Then he went to the back and cried and prayed and asked the Holy Spirit to, you know what I'm saying, to come over him.
Yeah, but it took him 30 years.
But his first response was to clap back. His first response was, "You're a thief." He set them up, sent them home to get their brother to bring him back. So that was his first response. That's not a good example.
No, but it was still a choice.
It was a choice. Exactly.
Right. It took him 30 years. It took him 30 years to get to that choice.
I didn't say whether the choice was good or bad, right or wrong. All I said is your response is a choice. That's all I said. That's
okay. But I believe that his hand was kind of forced in that situation.
No such thing.
Because my thing is, think about it.
But they made a choice.
Exactly. You sold me into slavery. I went through all of this stuff for it to turn around. Granted, at that time, he's not thinking that God put him in a situation. Like I said, he had them backslid, gave him the tools to the ladder to have him at the top of the food chain. So when he was needed, God had put him in a position where this is the position I need you to get in, but you needed to go through this up this way to get to this position. Granted, but at that moment when he was sold, that was not his first thought. Like, oh, the Lord's working in my life. If you hit me, I can't say, oh, the Lord's working in my life. No,
you can't. You're saying you can't.
I won't. Okay.
There you go.
You're right.
I won't. Thank you, buddy. Thank you.
I won't say if Pastor Andre comes and slapped me upside my head and he was like, the Spirit came and told me to hit you upside your head to knock some sense into you. I'm gonna be like, Pastor, today you've chosen violence. And what you have done is you've chosen violence for both of us. Okay? You made that choice for both of us. Guess what? You forced my hand in that one.
You definitely helped the brother out. I won't, not can't. You help me out. So because y'all got my back, we homies, we family. Watch me get controversial right now, and the live is about to blow up. If a 20, hold on, Sister Sonya, because you about to hang me upside down right now. If a 20-year-old fine sister got the God blessed her in all the right places, she's just really chiseled, and she's an amazing looking female. She walks into a room of all men, scantily dressed, knowing where she's going, doing it on purpose. Breast half, just her nipples covered, just her yin yang covered in them tight little drawers or whatever, revealing everything. She purposely walks into a room of all men because she wants the attention. If a man rapes her, that's like saying, you made the choice for me. You chose to come in here. You knew what you were doing. I decided to take it. And it's your fault. That's what you just said in a more hardcore, nasty way. You just said that to me. You're speaking to your weakness, not mine for how I dress. So if I come in there, I have the right to wear whatever I want. You have the audacity to tell me because of what I wore, you have the right to do that to me because I did it on purpose. You knew what you was doing. You wore the outfit. You chose to get this. So you just said that to me. You made me upset. You chose to get these hands. That speaks about your weakness.
If you hit me, you chose to get hit back. When we were little,
go to my analogy.
Our parents always told us somebody hit you, hit them back.
Use my analogy. Answer me with that analogy. The woman walks into a room with all men. Does she deserve it?
No. My thing is, you are in control of your actions and I'm in control of my actions. I have not done anything to reciprocate any actions where you put
Yeah, you did. I have a problem with women and how they dress, and you walked into the room. Yeah, you did.
Well, then that's where you should walk away.
Ooh,
you know what? Let me ask you
away from that person.
Can I answer your analogy? I'm gonna say like this. Back in the younger day, I would have said, yeah, I'm probably gonna take a piece of that. But now after life experience, I'm gonna say, you know what? I don't think I want to partake in that because I don't know if she loosey goosey flaunting whatever she may got. So I'm not even gonna try and touch that. Now I could probably definitely imagine what could happen, but as far as physically touching now, I'm almost seasoned in age. I'm not trying to touch that.
Well, I think that the analogy was a bit much to go
We
from
keeping it
somebody.
real.
No, well, I'm gonna get real. I had someone to literally walk up to me at church and do this to me. Now, I could have chosen to flatten her because that's what the angel, the little bad angel said, punch her in her face. You know, but the good angel was sitting over there, and somebody else who saw it was like, Sister Woodard, don't do it. Don't, because my fist was like, and my whole thing is, yes, you're responsible for your reactions, but sometimes people catch you off guard, and before you know it, you've reacted.
Mhm.
And the analogy of whether I wore a short skirt or not in a room full of men, who gave you the right to put your hands on me? That was the choice of the men. And their behavior, it's still their behavior. They chose to rape or to touch or to do whatever. Just like, well, let me go ahead and segue here. When we're talking about, correct, a man, okay, if a man walks, a nice built man like The Rock walks into a room with
The Rock
all
of
women,
Ages? You
are
talking
we
about the Rock of
allowed to
Ages?
jump
Are
him?
you talking about the Rock of Ages?
No, I sure am not. I'm talking about Dwayne The Rock Johnson. So here we go. You're talking about reactions and whatever. So with the same scenario, so if The Rock took his shirt off, it's okay for me to jump on him? No, I have to be responsible for my behavior as well. Just like those men are responsible for their behavior.
Sister
Just like
Sandra,
when we're in the church.
read the last two posts from Samuel and Errol. Read those last two posts.
I'm gonna let Corinne read it because I
Go ahead,
can't
Corinne.
see that.
The young man is right. I think you all are misunderstanding him. And Ray,
Oh, that's why you wanted that read. We're gonna skip over that one. Go to the
Read
next.
one.
Ray, that happened in Atlanta, and the judge ruled in that guy's favor.
Which what? I missed it.
Thank
Well,
you.
anyway, like I said,
Irrelevant.
No.
but
That's
it's
you need
the
to
same
address
thing.
that.
Okay,
You need to
Pastor
address that.
Andre, you being too quiet. I can't handle it. I'm starting to have reactions here. Now, Pastor,
Did I make
I
you have
know
those
that you
reactions?
have.
Is it my
Is
fault
that
you
not the
reactions?
double standard, Pastor? If a woman walks in with a short dress, it's okay for guys to ogle and touch or rape her. But if the man walks in, the women have to be dignified and whatever. Listen, I Pastor, come on, Pastor. Now you can't be over there with him.
There's something called personal agency. There's something, and in that there's hyper agency and hypo agency. Hyper agency is when you take away the agency of others. And agency means the ability to make decisions for yourself. Mm-hmm. And hypo agency is when you allow others to take away your agency. And so people, as we see people take liberty in these types of situations, if a young lady or a woman, period, is dressed according to the world's standards or principles inappropriately or revealing, right? When I went to the Museum of Prostitution in Holland, I think I've shared that with the young people before. I went to Amsterdam and went to the Museum of Prostitution, and there the prostitutes were highlighted as complaining that they had to take off more clothing and be more revealing because you couldn't tell the difference between them and normal people who were emulating their favorite pop stars that were emulating the dress of the strippers and the prostitutes. So you have this issue here, but that's one thing. That's a situation that's going on in society where we're blindly following individuals, or we're following individuals and adjusting our lifestyles to those individuals. That's one thing. But the other side of it is, now once you've chosen that inappropriate dress and you've gone out in public, what is an appropriate response from those who encounter you? It is never appropriate. Because a person should have agency over themselves. It is never appropriate to mishandle or otherwise handle someone, even if they're dressed inappropriate. There's no valid reason for that to happen or otherwise. It goes into a lot of the other things, personal space, all these other things. So I am not one to say that because a person is dressed a certain way, they should be harassed. I'll never say that. What I will say though is by doing so, a lot of people lack self-control. I've lacked self-control in my life. And so what we do is we set a table for confusion. And that is something that we ought to be mindful of. We set a table for confusion, but I will never sit here and blame someone for getting raped, because that was the bad actors. That was a bad action of someone who took advantage of that. So that's one thing. I guess the other side of it is, it comes down to personal responsibility and self-management. Why is that young lady dressing in a revealing manner? Why is everybody able to see her goods? Why is that young man wearing his skinny jeans so tight that his Rock of Gibraltar is revealed to everyone? It's probably a sock or a banana. I mean, I think that's what we were talking about earlier, right? If we try to keep it 100, right? Everybody's posturing and everybody wants to be sexy. Everybody wants to be desired. Everybody wants to be all these things. But the question is, when we get out from behind closed doors where we get dressed and we get out into public, and we are now we get out of simulation mode and into field testing, and we encounter things, and we experience things. What do? Do we go back now and reassess and reflect and look at ourselves in the environment? And does that young lady or that grown woman, because I've seen grown women dressing revealing for various reasons. They're looking for a man. They might sit in church, but just because you sit in church don't mean you're looking for a relationship, right? There's some folk who are lonely. We're only talking about women because we're talking about that dress, but I'll bring the men in too. You button down an extra button, put on some extra cologne. At what point do we stop and reflect on what it is we're doing and the risk that we're engaging in? When I would go to the clubs as a young man, and I go into that environment and I see that environment comes with a lot of expectations. Number one expectation is you're there because you want to have a good time. You may be there because you want to mingle and socialize. But at the end of the day, we don't realize the danger that we place ourselves, especially in 2021, the danger that we place ourselves in when we get into these environments. So for my daughter to get dressed, put the twins out, expose the bottom cheeks in the Daisy Don'ts, right? And walk into that environment, she's walking into a very dangerous environment. And I would hope that that number one, she maintains her agency to be able to say no, because you should be able to say no, always be able to say no. Mm-hmm. And I don't care if you're about to have sex and you were thinking about doing it, you should always be able to say no.
Now, do you believe that it's a choice to respond to any situation and stimuli?
Everything is a choice. Everything is a choice. And I think that we are responsible for our choices, and there are outcomes that there are responses to our choices. Like the old man said to the young lady when she came out of the house decked out, right? And again, this is not me being an Adventist or whatever, right? This is or a Christian. This is me being a father, right? Old man says to the young lady, he whistles. He said, whistled at her, right? And she turned and said, "I'm not your kind." He said, "Well, if you ain't my kind, why are you wearing a sign?" We like to ignore the fact that there are symbols and things that represent that we are down with certain behavior. There are wristbands that the young folk wear that say that they like to do certain things. Yeah, right? Corin, I'm not that old that I don't know that certain ones say they like to give head. Other ones say they like to have sex all the time.
They banned them from school because it gotten so bad.
Yeah, this is real stuff. So I want to deal with the real, and I want to deal with the fact that choices are the monkey wrench of society, of this universe, and that God is pro-choice. God says, "I place before you life and death, blessing and a cursing," but it's not a riddle. He says, "Choose life," and so choices are heavy, and I've been pissed at some church folks sometimes for the way they come at me, but I have also learned, it ain't gonna change their opinion. A person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. So I've just kind of more so decided that I'm going to manage how I react. I'm going to manage my reaction.
Sister Sonia, do you see some of these comments? It's getting nice and hot up in here.
I see some of these comments, and this would be the perfect time to segue right off of what Pastor said. Now, Pastor, you talked about choices and just because somebody dresses. Now, I have to say this because, like I said, I've talked to young people, but older people, there are some people who come to church and they look like they all Ellen G. White down. And then when you see them in the street, you like, that can't be sister such and such. Because at the end of the day, we want to say, do as I say, but we don't do, but we don't live that life.
Let me color that.
And a lot of people dress a certain way because they want the attention. And they feel like, this is the only way I can get attention, or I'm hurt. I'm looking for love. And then the young people go out there who feel like they don't have love at home. And then they go out here because I talk to them, but we got older people who are in the same boat, and they go out here looking for love in all the wrong places, end up getting into a sexual relationship with someone, or a unhealthy relationship. It doesn't have to necessarily even go all the way to that. And then some of them who are talking to me, here it is, they engage in other sexual or oral acts and think that because they did something orally or anally that they're still virgins. I'm here to say that if you engage in something where it ends in sex, that you have committed the act. And I don't think we serve a God who's namsy-pamsy, who tries to ride on the line. You either are in or you're out. And we have to make some choices, going back to what you said, Brother Gray. It's choices. And Pastor, you said the same thing. The choices that you make today impact you tomorrow. Whether you're young, whether you're old, we have to decide what we're going to do. But now that certain people have gotten into these sexual liaisons, they don't know how to get back. And let me tell you, we serve a God. Now, come on, Pastor. We serve a God who's forgiving, right?
Yeah, I want to be very clear with it that, I don't stand in anybody's way of their choice they want to make. I might talk to my daughters about certain things in that regard, but I want you to learn how to make a choice, because one of the most dangerous things in this world is when you don't know how to make one. Again, when you give away your right to choose to someone else who's going to choose for you. And the thing is that television and music, we don't even realize the auto suggestions that are given. And society, and we have the brand Child of God, of course, that finally will be released in September. The Lord blessed with a designer that came in and really helped us to do some things. What I realized, though, is there's a color palette for the fall that has been subliminally introduced to society through television and through ad and marketing. There's a color palette for the fall that if you're not in the fashion industry, you don't even know it exists. Now there's not only a color palette, but there's also styles, and those styles are predicated off of famous singers and people and influencers and people who follow them, the Kardashians and so on and so forth. And people begin to adopt. I know Gray could agree with this. People begin to adopt these things and don't even realize why they're adopting it. So we know not what we do. Jesus tried to tell us that on the cross. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do it. And so if you have someone who's willing to speak up, like I'm willing to speak up and say, listen, I was at the Museum of Prostitution. I understand they laid it out why society, they put Beyonce and Madonna up on the board, and they show them in the fishnet stockings, the cat suits, and the stuff that was only once worn in the burlesque shows and the prostitution houses of prostitution. And they're letting you know this is where it came from. So now if you know that where it came from, and you know that is to incite excitement in men, you have a choice. You can wear it, but once you make that choice, know that you will be affronted.
Consequences. Mm-hmm.
you will be confronted with those who have no GABA and have no self. What's the word I'm looking for? Somebody help me out. No
Containment.
No breaks. They have no breaks. And so I think that, yeah, you know, I say this every time we meet, Sister Sonia. Knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit, but wisdom is knowing not to put it in fruit salad. You can wear what you want, but just know that when you go out, you may have to defend yourself. You may have to run. You might even have to hide in some cases, or you might have to wrap your sweatshirt around your waist, because for women, every man is eyeballing you moving in. And, you know, men, we don't tend to have that issue as much, because what are we really wearing that's that revealing? But I mean, I guess these young men that sag their pants and show their
tight shirts,
gray sweatpants.
I can't stand the drawers showing, man. You know, you need to. They don't even.
If you go to the gym, you will find the majority of men in gray sweatpants. There's something about gray sweatpants in men. Like when I go to the gym, you're laughing. But
I'm laughing only because I hear you loud and clear, and it's the honest truth. Go ahead.
It's the honest truth. And just like we want to say that men are predators, but women can be predators also. I don't want young men to think, oh, a woman can't be a predator, or a woman can't, because sometimes women do the unwanted touching, the unwanted hugging, the unwanted groping, you know, and our men feel like if they say something, there's a problem with them if they say something if a woman's touching them.
I woke up 1989. I was traveling. I was in high school, my senior year of high school, traveling with Lincoln University Choir. We came back from a trip to the Bahamas. The bus got back to the Lincoln University campus extremely late up there in Oxford, Pennsylvania. I couldn't go back to the Pine Forge campus, so I stayed in the co-ed dormitory, and they actually put us in one of the young ladies' rooms, right? I woke up with one of the young ladies on top of me. And I don't mean we weren't naked or nothing. I was asleep. I'm 17 years old, and I think she might have been a junior. I got on top of me. I woke up because I feel pressure on me, and she's dressed. I'm dressed, laying on top of the blankets, and she's on top of me. Now that, you know, again, when we hear that, we don't get. I don't know if anybody here got irate. But if it was the flip side, if it was a woman, if I got on top of her, it'd be like, oh, you know. So this is a really complex. It's a lot.
It gets deeper than that, because as men, we're considered weak or less than if we don't take that opportunity.
If we don't take that opportunity, yeah.
At the age of 16, man, I was almost raped by my girlfriend at the time, and it sounds whack. Like, how does that happen? But I mean, I was a virgin. You know what I'm saying? And I was a proud virgin, and we were dating, and she was a pastor's daughter. Want to have sex. We were in a relationship for a year, you know, and she was about to go off to Oakwood, and I thought that we were gonna get married. I didn't want to have sex. I thought that women would love that about a man who was still a virgin and was respectful enough to, you know, protect that. But we were on our senior class trip. Something about that senior class, man. But yeah, man, and we, you know, we were just, you know, doing all kissing and stuff like that, and she ended up throwing me in the bathroom, locking the door. Her friends were guarding the door so nobody would come in. And she legit, like, you know what I'm saying? And at first I was just like, oh, you tripping. I thought it was a joke, but she was getting angry the more I said no. And I'm just like, wow, I was really, really confused. I was confused. We can talk about that a little bit more in October so I can go into details.
But that's the issue, because we don't teach. That was a stigma. Back then, you didn't talk to your kids about sex. Back then, it was literally like blind, where these kids were just experiencing, you know, sexual activities by themselves, because we really did not sit down. Like, I can't remember anybody talking to me about sex saying, hey, this is what you do, this is what you don't do, guard the avenue, this is how, you know, giving me the tips of, hey, this is what could possibly happen. And that was the stigma. We ran away from that when we were younger. No one opened the door and said, look, going out into the world, this is what happens.
Mm-hmm.
This is a possibility of what could happen. These are the consequences. You need to prepare yourself for going out there into the world, because we're trying to protect you as much as we can, basically. But once you leave out of my presence, my protection is no longer upon you as a parent. You know what? Regardless, when you leave, when your child leaves out your door, let's say they go into the movies, you have to literally give them the tools they need to be able to function when you go to the movie. Don't let these little girls put their hands down your pants. Don't let these little girls be rubbing on you. Don't. I tell my son, when you get a girlfriend, don't go to this girl house and her parents don't know, and then the daddy walk in and you sitting up there and he beat you up for it.
Or kill
Yeah,
you.
but we don't even have to go that far. You know, we need to give our kids that tools even at church, because predators come to church, and they come to church on purpose. And we tend to turn a blind eye to the fact that we got predators right at church. My kids were not allowed to go to the bathroom by themselves, ever, because I didn't want that to happen to them. And why don't we give our children the tools to know that everybody at church is not safe? And to give my daughter the those signs. And I told her, when you feel a bell go off or you get that red alert in your brain, follow it, because it's God or the Holy Spirit trying to keep you, to let you know it's not safe. Too many times we ignore those, you know. And Brother Gray, that's one of the things I would like for you to talk about when you come in October, because we don't follow those instincts. We don't follow that alarm bell going off in our head. Even when it comes down to marriage, sometimes those alarm bells, and I know Pastor talked about it one time when we were all sitting together in a rap session. When those things come, we rush into getting married to somebody where you already know you having issues. Why would you think it's gonna change? If you having issues now, it only gets worse when you get married.
There are always warning signs. We just don't always listen to them.
And to find those tools, but especially with, you know, predators in the church, predators outside, we've got to, even predators in your house. If you know your house isn't safe, why would you leave your child there? I worked in a detention center where I saw children coming in molested, doing the molesting because they were molested.
Mm-hmm.
And the cycle, when are we going to stop that cycle? And trying to find love through having sex, it's never going to give you fulfillment, because you're missing something. And we've got to talk about that. Our time is like fleeting here. We never really got into the other subject that we want to talk about, getting more into the sexual prowess, and how you're trying to find, you know, Brother Gray can. But in these last few minutes, Brother Gray, if you could give us a little snippet on that, and then we're going to do part 2 next week. I don't, Brother Gray won't be with us, but I don't, whoever is here, if Brother Pastor Andre, if you have time, if you'd like to be with us next week. But we're going to do part 2 of this next week, so that we could get into more things. But go ahead, Brother Gray. I'm sorry.
No, it's necessary. I just really want to say this was a very fruitful, insightful conversation, and amazing dialogue. And I feel like that's the best forum for our young people, where we're not preaching at them. We're not, talking down to them. We're having a conversation amongst ourselves. And you can see even in our conversation, we get passionate too. But we respectfully respect everyone else's opinions, and we may not always agree, but we love the fact that we all share, we all think so deeply and so broadly. And this is an amazing example of how young people should have conversation. We may not always see eye to eye, but we respect one another to be like, you go, sis, and, just encourage each other to be free, open thinkers. And I just love the fact that we're not just talking about it, we're actually being about it in the example of what we gave here. So I kudos to you guys and your team for doing an amazing job. As we transition, in closing, throughout the chat, we were putting in how important the ACE score is. I hope individuals had the opportunity to take the ACE. Did anyone of the panelists get a chance to take the ACE test?
I
No?
did.
You did? You did? All right. So basically, the ACE is adverse childhood experience. And what's so amazing about that is we encourage that children, once you've made it past the age of 18, you take the ACEs test because it gives an idea of what has happened in one's past to make us respond, feel, react, and behave in the way we do in present. It's a benchmark. It doesn't define you, but it definitely does give you tools and keys. And what's interesting, where a lot of people don't really correlate the connection and the link between brain, body, and behavior, what happens in one's past in terms of trauma, drama, the environment in which you lived, neglect, abuse, and all of that matters not just for one's mental health, but for your physical health. It is directly linked to diabetes, to cancer, to all a host of other problems that those questions ask. And it breaks it down into three major categories of neglect, abuse, and environment in which one was raised, and the different things that has happened to us that present in our adulthood. And the reason why it's important now is because we are all grown. But while we're now grown, we did not necessarily, like Toy said, we weren't taught certain things. A lot of things weren't addressed. And we were taught, I know I was taught as a New Yorker and a Jamaican, is like, you keep your problems to yourself. You don't talk about family issues. You don't talk about that stuff. And especially as a man, you know, you got to man up. You got to be macho. Don't be a sissy. Don't be no punk. And that language was so embedded in me that even myself, I didn't realize until I took the score how much that stuff, even as a mental health counselor, how much that stuff affected me. The higher the number, the greater the deficit, the score, and the lesson, how much diminished one's time is in terms of age lived. My score is a 7. And that is extremely significant because anything past the score of a 3 is profound. So the higher you go in a number is the greater deficits and the greater chances of one having problems in their adulthood, not just mentally, but physically, and the livelihood in which we live and the years lived on this earth are diminished substantially. And I encourage everyone to not just take the test, but to read up on it because it is so very important. Again, it doesn't define you. I have ADHD. I am what they call dually. I have a inattentive and hyperactive. So it's what they call the combined type. And when you throw out the word ADHD, some people just think, oh, that's just someone who's hyper. Well, for me, it is way deeper than that. I have to literally focus, rearrange my life and how I do things and how I operate in order for me to function even in the little. But God is a God that he allows everything from what the Bible says and how I receive it. He allows everything to happen for a reason. So what has happened was me growing up in such chaos, trauma, and dysfunction. It has now made me immune to trauma, drama, and dysfunction, so much so that I'm able to be in a position that I teach and I counsel kids who are where I once was. What that did was it took my quote unquote, what man calls a disability and turned it to what God has made an ability. Because now I connect with these young people on a level that I don't have to say a word. The moment I walk in the door, they're relieved because they feel me. You know how we used to say game recognize game, pain recognize pain, and hurt people hurt people. That's the realm in which I live. That's the world in which I live. I'm what they call an intensive in-home therapist. You don't come to me because you're having problems with your mom and dad or because you're depressed or because you're stressed. You come to me when it's the last stop. You just went to jail, you're coming back from jail. You just went to group home, you're coming back from group home. Or your behaviors are so intense, you got kicked out of regular therapy or you're about to get kicked out of home. That's when you come to Ray Gray's caseload. So I have what they call the worst of the worst. And we know that God doesn't make anything that's bad. We just make bad choices and bad decisions. But that's what they think they are because that's what they've been told. And life and death is in the power of the tongue. We know that if you tell a child they're bad, first they're going to believe it. And then what happens once you believe it, you live it. So that's what's happening. I'm having these kids who are confused and they said, well, if mommy who claims that they love me, if daddy who says that he got my back is telling me I'm bad, Why would they lie to me? I must be that. So again, they're living out what they were taught. And it's the hell in which that they were raised that now they become hellions because that's all they knew. So, we're going to expound on that. We're going to really, really dig much deeper into that when I come back in October to unpack a lot of what's happening. But again, we are in an amazing position as leaders, as mentors, as teachers, as parents to understand that our children, the ones that we have birthed, are literally fractions of us. It is the H chromosome and the Y chromosome that have come together. They didn't have a choice in being here. They didn't have a say in which ones of our strongholds and which one of our issues they're going to take on as a child. No, they don't have a say in that. And more than likely, the child that you're having the greatest difficulty with is the one that's most like you. 90% of the time, that is facts. The child that you have the greatest difficulty with is the one that's most like you. And we're operating out of two systems. The first system is, I know what I did growing up, and I refuse to allow my son or my child to go through what I did. The second system we're operating out of is the place of pain and hurt that we never dealt with. And we see ourselves once again rearing its ugly head in our child, and we hate it so much we try to nip it in the bud, we try to stop it, or we end up doing it in the wrong way and we push against that child, and now we have put some distance between us and the child. So that's just facts. And then when you find that person, if you don't have any kids, or if your kids are grown, and now you're bumping heads with someone in the church, the same holds true. That child that you're constantly arguing with, that you're constantly saying, oh, this child is going to grow up to be nobody, you low-key might be seeing a lot of yourself in that individual, and it's hard for you to accept that that's you and that's how you used to be. You're fighting against the natural order of what is, because what happened was we took our baggage and our issue as children, and all we did was grow with it. So we didn't get rid of it. We didn't resolve it. We didn't go to therapy. We took it with us, and now it's grown as we have grown. We just tried to suppress it and put it to the back of our minds as if we would forget it. No, it presents itself in a different way. It manifests in different ways. It may show up on the job. It may show up in a relationship. It may show up in how we interact and why we do certain things in church and at different places. Well, the children are doing the same thing, but they don't have a job yet. Their job is play. So that's how they engage. And some of the maladaptive behaviors that they're having, it's only because of, again, the environment in which they live and things that have been passed down to them, unbeknownst to them, and because they had no choice in the matter. So there are some things that don't have choice, and that one thing is called hereditary. So again, the ACEs is amazing. Once you have reached the age of 18 and over, take the test, read up about it, find out about your childhood, and your jaw will drop when you realize how deeply affected you are from things that happened to you as a child that you either didn't give rise to or you even forgot about. Because as Toy said, we have natural defense systems and organisms in place that God has put in that we don't have to say, oh, I'm about to be attacked, defense up. We don't have to activate it. It happens naturally. And that's a system that happens. And sometimes unless we stop and think about what we're doing, we won't actually realize that's a defensive response. That's not an anger response. So like Sister Pam was saying, why does it when a Black sister asserts herself is automatically anger? That's not necessarily the case, because we respond to three ways: flight, fight, or freeze. Some of us stand and fight and we go to blows. Some of us freeze and we don't know what to do and how to respond. And some of us run away. But that's the amygdala. That was built in our systems. That was God gave us that. We have to be more cognizant and aware of how to activate it, when to activate it, and how much of it to take root. Yes. So you can get that control. So you can work on managing those different things of the body. But that's just like telling the nose to smell. You don't have to do that. Telling the heart to beat. You can't do that. So there's some things that are automatic and there are some things that are in our control. And the more we learn about oneself is the more you're able to have choice and control, much like what we were talking about tonight. So I just thank you guys for the opportunity to just drop a little nugget. On October, we will get deep. I'm going to have the assessments for you. I'll literally have the ACEs up so we can take it together. I'm going to have the temperament test for you so you can figure out sanguine, melancholic, choleric, phlegmatic. Which temperament are you? How do you respond? Because oftentimes when we see people, we say, I don't like them. It's not that you don't like them. It's just you're opposed to the temperament that you don't know, because sanguines are attracted to melancholics and phlegmatics are naturally attracted to cholerics. But if you don't know what you are, you don't know what you're close to and what you respond best to, nor do you know who you repel or who you're against. So you have to first know yourself in order to, how the world says, know your enemy. But in our case, we know that the enemy is Satan. He just, puts different people in our past and in our way sometimes to test us. Because again, every test must first go through God, lest we put ourselves on purpose on the devil's playground. And the only way to do that is to blaspheme the Holy Spirit. So that's my time. I appreciate the invite, and whatever you guys need from me, just hit me up and I got you.
All right. Well, I appreciate everyone that's been on. Pastor, do you have any final words?
No, I think that Ray laid it out. So we I hope I look forward to at least be able to be on when he comes back next month to hear the presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, we hope to have everything streamed as well, but I just want to thank everybody else on the panel for being here. Thank everyone for tuning in. Please send your comments to Daughter of Zion, SDA Church, if you have comments or ideas. And everyone be blessed. Have a wonderful, blessed, safe week, especially with the pandemic. And hope to see you all back here again. Have a great day.
All right.
Peace, everyone.